Educational innovation is sort of a shorthand for the idea of trying to sort of plan a strategic way to change universities that's in keeping with their own culture. One of the defining aspects of particularly comprehensive research universities like UW-Madison is they're very connected to the global knowledge economy, not only because of what we do, but some of the innovations that we make have fired up that global economy. The imperative to educational innovation is a sort of macroeconomic shift in the nature of public investment, not just for higher education, but public investment in general. Clearly, the recession-depression that is ultimately finance-based, credit-based collapse has left huge structural deficits. And higher education, in many ways, is at the state level more than the federal level, is a casualty of that issue. I would argue that really from the end of World War II to the early first decade of this century, there were certain underlying commonalities to how higher education related to taxation and the economy. And my worry is that it's broken right now, that there's a fundamentally different situation. So I think there is a crisis, a resource crisis that we have to address. It would be easy to say, let's wait around and assume that things will change like they did over the last 60 or 70 years. I don't think they will. I think we're in a new, quote, economic era, a new political era, and it would be bad for us to just assume it will change. That's not prudent. We need to try to do something to ourselves that increases revenues and capacity to allow us to survive this very difficult resource crisis. I think the best strategic plans, which I believe this is, are enlivened and given legitimacy by having lots of flowers blooming so that it's truly experimental and lots of pilots. But where I think higher education is limited and has been limited in the last 20 years as it's tried to create reform movements is that it's 1,000 blooms, but there's no hybridization and there's no scaling up. And so we find enormously creative innovation at small scale, small groups of people. Certain programs are very creative. So it's not a lack of innovation, it is scaling that innovation to a new scale, both at the individual institutional level, at the interdepartmental level, and even at an interinstitutional level. And I think that's where we have to think hardest. We don't have to think hard about innovation at the small scale. It is finding that, nourishing it, and scaling it upwards. I think most strategic plans in universities that try to be top-down really fail because it doesn't engage not only the legitimacy of faculty and staff and students, but also doesn't tap in to their contribution to the change itself. And I think the psychology department at UW-Madison, in my view, is quite revolutionary in how it completely reevaluated its courses. Certain areas were now more important to modern psychology. Some graduate courses could be almost cross-fertilized with courses for seniors, and they were able to deliver the curriculum with many fewer courses that were much more relevant to 21st century psychology. What we have to do is engage other faculty in what their colleagues are doing, and if I can broker those relationships as Chancellor, that's my achievement. It's not to sort of impose, we've all got to do this, but rather generate a dialogue where the best practices of our best teachers, who are often great researchers too. In my view, there's no assumption that just because somebody's put a lot of time in their course, they're neglecting their research. So I'm interested in creating a campus-wide dialogue about best practices, and then perhaps look at other institutions as well to see how are they progressing. The reason we need to do that is 5 years from now, if we don't keep up, we could have a non-competitive, somewhat obsolete curricula. And I would hate to see us in that position where you now have very little money, but you're also not that competitive. I think there are two ways that we can probably enhance our already enormously successful research mission. One is large-scale research, inter-departmental research, like what's going on in energy research right now, perhaps also in areas of public health, a variety of areas where groups of people may have to get together. The individual grant system is not where all the money is. And the second one is how to deal with patent revenue, license revenue, industrial contracts in a way that still preserves our academic freedom, but lets our knowledge become to the benefit of society. If it's a pure social benefit, we should be doing it as a public good, as part of our outreach. But if it is assimilated and further developed by the private sector, we would like to share whatever those gains would be. WARF has been the instrument of doing that, but I think there are ways in which many faculty don't fully realize that there is some value in their intellectual property, and having a more organized way of reaping that and having faculty feel they can get expertise and thoughtful help, legal and otherwise. There is a D2P program, Discovery to Product program, that will, I think, help faculty consider that as an option. We've created a team, one of whom is Jeff Russell, who is very knowledgeable in technology and education, as well as being very sensitive to blended delivery. Aaron Brower, who has been involved in learning innovation long before I came back, and Maury Cotter, who I think is very astute at planning, a planning process that's very communicative, very two-way. So we've got them to sort of start a viral structure that moves out. And what we're interested in is a lot of feedback. For example, we know there are a lot of obstacles to change that we put in ourselves. So they're also, in addition to providing positive help, they're trying to also say, if we could remove restraints for you, what would they be? Are they in trying to propose a new course? Is that too cumbersome? Are they the semester system and 2 courses a semester means it's very hard for me to stop, re-equip myself, and move forward. How can we begin to resolve this? Because you probably do have to pause, rethink, and there may be some time restraint. So we're looking for help and assistance. I believe that if we really can scale our changes and make them more visible to students, legislators, and the private sector, I think that provides the ammunition to go after new public money. And if we're to find core funding, we'll have to find some nuanced tuition policy and new public money. I don't think just saying we're entitled to what we used to have will get us there. So again, I think the dividend will be, it will help us restore, if you like, the public in public higher education to be a kind of low change, rather disinterested, innovative culture. I don't think is going to get us to recover the public money we deserve. So it may be that if we can just, with self-help and the leverage of self-help, over a 3 to 5 year period, really energize a sort of sense that the public and our legislators can really recognize middle to large scale change. I think that's the best way to re-articulate a public vision for public higher education.